Hello and welcome back to the Thought Leader Recruit podcast. I'm Sam Bylett. Today I'm joined by Victoria Waye, Director of Business Development at Lee Group Search. Victoria, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
It's great to have you. So, Victoria, can you start by giving us a quick kind of overview of the niche you're currently focusing on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work within the renewable industry. So everything, and I should really say more sustainable industry. So everything from wind, solar, hydro, biofuels, energy storage, EV, energy efficiency, hydrogen, and anything that's kind of considered green energy.
And what first pulled you into that kind of renewable energy space?
Yeah. So for me, I was working in oil and gas recruiting for a very short period of time, and I didn't really enjoy it. But I was like, okay, well, that's what I've been assigned to, so I'm going to do it. And I ended up on a conversation with a individual who had been a petroleum engineer and had switched to renewable energy and gone to be a CFO for a solar company. And I think him and I ended up on the phone for like 2.5 hours in that initial phone call. And he told me everything I really needed to get started in renewables. So I went to my boss the next day and I'm like, I want to do renewable energy. And I've been here for 12 years now. So it's a
Well,
great space.
yeah, for sure. And what kind of work are you doing kind of day to day?
So right now I'm only responsible for the business development for our organization, but we do work with everything from wind technicians to CEOs. So it really just depends on what each of our clients need, whether it is an engineer, a procurement manager. We actually just had a call about a core auditor, which we're really excited about. So it's a little bit of a newer role for us, but something that we're excited to try our hands at and see if we can be successful there.
Exciting. And are there any kind of certain areas you're seeing more demand in right now?
I would say engineering is always in demand. You can't really keep electrical engineers on the shelf these days. So that's probably the highest demand. And then there's a lot in the development front. So project developers or salespeople who are selling product to project developers. There's a little bit of a shift as well into like the O&M side. So a lot more in the field technician type people who are doing the day-to-day work of making sure that projects are running efficiently.
And yeah, I read recently that the US energy storage capacity is expected to grow fivefold by 2030, thanks to the push of renewable energies. Or how is the shift kind of showing up in your world?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think energy storage really started to become more commercialized and popularized about 5 years ago. So we really saw a lot more really focused and driven organizations that are looking at energy storage plus solar or adding an energy storage component to existing solar projects. So we've seen a lot in that kind of arena for the last 5 years. It's become a lot more stable as well, probably in the last 2 or 3, where it's become a viable technology, but it's also become a value add for a lot of developers where they're like, hey, we're going to make more money if we can get a component to store this energy. But it's also stabilized a lot of the projects in the sense that when, the maybe the wind's not blowing or maybe the sun isn't shining as brightly as they need it to be, that kind of thing, you're seeing a lot more demand coming from that energy storage. So there's been a ton of shift into those types of projects that have added a whole different capacity to the projects that we're seeing these days.
Yeah, sure. And looking ahead to say kind of 2026, what should companies hiring in this space start preparing for now?
Shortage of engineers always.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't express that enough that there's always going to be a shortage of engineers in the field and especially good engineers. So there are lots of engineers that, will jump from job to job to job based off of the compensation, but finding that really solid talent that's going to consistently be a part of your team and really grow with the organization is extremely important. So I would say, like, in terms of engineers, it's really important to train and develop the next generation of engineers. And so bringing in individuals that are like recent graduates who are really just trying to get that first stab at their engineering experience is really important. One of the companies that I previously worked with, Pure Power Engineering, does that really, really well. They do like a new grad hire every year, twice a year in January and June, and they take the best and brightest and they teach them how to do all of the different steps within the process, whether it's construction or development. And it really breeds a greater sense of loyalty from those individuals because this company took a chance on them. They trained them, they taught them, they pay well, they've got a great company culture. And so those are all things that are super important for energy storage companies to abide by and to look at when they're looking for talent. Um, I think there's a lot of companies that do it really, really well, and there's a lot of companies that don't do it as well. And it's so key to creating a really dynamic workforce.
Yeah, for sure. I suppose, becoming an engineer, it takes years, right? And the skill set you must have to for that level, it must be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wouldn't be in our business if it weren't for the fact that, like, there are companies out there that are like, we need somebody now who's already trained, who's already developed, who can jump in, boots on the ground, ready to do diagrams, or sorry, line diagrams, design, understands the electrical components that go in. We just wouldn't be in business if there weren't companies out there that needed those types of people. So when I say, like, train that next generation, I'm thinking about how are you going to ensure that you have the right workforce long term, so in your next 5 to 10 years versus tomorrow. When it comes to looking at people for tomorrow that you need right away, because let's say you've won some massive project or you're planning to build a massive project of, 100 to 200 megawatts, it's important to set your organization apart from all the other noise of every other recruiter that's calling on them and every other company that's calling on them. And so a lot of that comes with ensuring that you have a really healthy baseline of internal culture. So understanding that engineers, most of them that have experience, don't really want to be at a desk in an office every day. A lot of them want the freedom of working from home. Understanding that, like, within the US or Canadian market, you don't necessarily have to have that engineer in the office every day. So even though you might be headquartered in Calgary or New York or California, that person could be based anywhere within your country and still be as productive as if they were in your office every day. They're great at virtual training as well. So we've really seen a shift where some of these senior to mid-level engineers are really great at getting on with the younger engineers and training and developing them and helping them understand where they've gone wrong in some of the stuff that they're doing and effectively teaching them the right principles and practices. The second part of that is, creating a culture where everybody feels heard. So not saying, well, this is the way it's always been done. We're going to just stick with this same standard day-to-day procedure, but really saying, hey, that's a great idea. Let's investigate it further. And if it really does work, we'll implement it across the board. So those are the things that we're finding most engineers are looking for. I would say that actually goes across the board for everyone. Like, everybody wants those two flexibilities. It's not always going to come down to money these days. You're always going to have that group of people who's just looking for who's going to pay me the most. But you also have this group of individuals that really just wants to be in an organization where they come into work every day. They're not feeling like, "Oh, I got to do another 8 hours with this company." It's just so important to have an exciting and vibrant environment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, for sure. And that cultural fit as well throughout the companies is so important these days, isn't it? As well as, yeah, the salary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try to steer clear of, like, saying DEI out loud, but only because of some of the feelings and sentiments around it. And there's so much I guess, miscommunication about what those actually mean. I mean, it's not about saying, well, because, you're a typical white engineer, you're not as valuable as somebody who is of color or a gender mix or has a different value set in terms of their sexual orientation. It's about leveling that playing field out. And that all falls within the culture of an organization. So it's about not looking at the name, not looking at the color, not looking at the gender, not looking at the orientation, but looking at the actual skill set and the characteristics and value set that come from that individual. And I think there's a lot of companies out there that are like, well, we need to diversify. So we're only going to hire people of color. And they discount people who aren't within that group setting. And I think a lot of people think that that is what's going on every company on day to day, but it's not. There's a lot of really great programs out there that really level that playing field and really make it a better experience for everyone. I feel like you need to have a variety of people within your organization to form the best culture because, as an example, somebody from a lower socioeconomical experience than you might have a different way of budgeting for a project that adds so much value to being able to stay under budget. Which, if you've got everybody from the same level, you might not necessarily see areas where you can scrimp or save, or it might not be as important to have X consultant than Y consultant. So it's really just an interesting conversation around it. And I'm a little bit I guess I love talking diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to my clients and the culture within an organization and making sure that everybody is getting that equal opportunity, regardless of who they are, where they came from, or what they're doing, as long as that experience is aligning with what the organization is looking for and the value system aligns. And I think that value system is really what we should be gauging people on.
Yeah, for sure. I'm guessing, I'm presuming it. Is it quite a male dominated industry still?
I really feel like renewable energy does a much better job than a lot of other industries out there of making it an equal playing field for everyone. Organizations like Women in Renewable and Sustainable Energy have done such a great job of advocating for women in our industry. When I started 12 years ago, it was definitely, a couple women in the room and a whole lot of males, but I'm starting to see there's a much bigger push. There's a lot more women that are in positions of senior leadership. I mean, we've got a long way to go. There's still a lot of things going on. I'd love to see a lot more women in the trades, but we've got a lot of organizations now that are really working on advocating for women and really getting women interested in the industry from a trades level. You've got like Women in Power, you've got women in trades, and they're just really focused on showing women that, like, yes, you can do this. You can be an electrician. You can be a mechanic. You can be a wind tech. You can be a solar installer. So we're seeing, even in the lowest levels, a lot more growth there. But I would say, overall, yes, there are a lot of women in the industry, and it is growing month by month, year by year. I think there's still small pockets in North America where you can go into a conference or a room and it's still very heavily male dominated and there isn't so much of that mixture. But even those areas, you're starting to see a lot more growth for women.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And how much headhunting actually happens in this space? I'm curious to know.
So I have maybe placed one or two people in 12 years from job boards. The majority of what I actually do is headhunting. I think that that's pretty common for most recruiting agencies in the space. It's a lot about networking and it's a lot about who you know. And I don't think that that is even just exclusive to renewable energy. I think there are so many different industries out there that now focus more on who you know. The worst thing that you can do for your organization is make the wrong hire. And it's a lot harder to understand who that hire is when it's just a piece of paper in a job portal. There is, I guess, a little bit to be said about the fact that like you can get really good candidates from a job portal. And I know a lot of organizations still rely on that fairly heavily, and they still do go through it and go through those resumes and they hire from there. But I think from a recruiter's perspective, you know, a lot of the people that I place are people that I have actually met physically in person over the years at conferences, people I have placed previously, people who have come from organizations that I've worked with. So maybe they had a round of layoffs and now they're looking for work and they come to me and they're like, "Hey, you've always done a great job of recruiting for us. Now, can you help me find an opportunity?" So I would say it's heavily focused on actual head hunting versus just trolling the job boards to try and find people who apply online. And to be fair, like a lot of applicants that we get online, when you're looking at a job posting on LinkedIn and it says 200 people have applied. Of those 200 people, probably only 2 or 3 of those people have any relevant experience. And it's not always relevant experience to the position. So I find a lot of the time I'll find people who apply through job postings and I'll save those resumes. I try to reach out to them and just be like, "Hey, this isn't a fit, but I'll get back to you with something that might be." But I've seen some wild things over the years. You know, I was looking for a VP of origination and I got a florist who applied. And I'm like, how do you think that that's necessarily going to translate? It doesn't, unfortunately. And I get the ambition of like, "Hey, I don't want to deal with flowers for the rest of my life." And everybody's got to start somewhere, but maybe VP of origination wasn't the right tactic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just so easy to apply for these jobs online these days. A click of a button, you can apply for hundreds of jobs. It's
Yeah.
crazy, right?
Yeah, and I mean the job search itself is not easy. I wrote a LinkedIn post about this a couple months ago. I went on a job search myself and I started off just applying on job boards, and I found one position that was like with one of my competitors. It was the same role as I was already in. I thought I was a perfect fit, and within a few minutes I got a rejection from that company. And it was really frustrating because I didn't know why I was being rejected, because I knew I was a perfect fit. But that happens so often with job boards. So I always say to my candidates, like, don't spend your entire time just applying on job boards, because the chances of you getting a job directly from that really are not that great. And sometimes you might have the perfect resume for what they're looking for, but maybe you didn't use the right keywords and their ATS automatically rejected you. So when I say it's all about who you know, it's not necessarily just like your old softball coach or, you know, Billy Bob that you sold a couple inverters to. It's about reaching out to everybody in your network and growing your network. So it's okay to reach out to those people that are hiring and say, "Hey, I saw this. Your company really aligns with my value system. I understand that I might not be a fit now, but please do keep me in mind for something in the future." And if you take it from that approach, you're not necessarily being annoying, because sometimes people, they message you in like 15 different platforms and you're like, "Okay,
Yeah.
this is a bit aggressive." But you're taking it from an approach where maybe they didn't even actually see your resume. They look at your LinkedIn profile and they're like, "Ah, this person actually would have been a great fit for that role." And it prompts them to change their mind or to think differently or to actually see the value behind your own skill set. I started doing that because I got really frustrated after the second week and I had no phone calls, I had no interviews. And I mean, I on paper, anybody that would look at my resume is like, "Wow, that's really great." But I went the route of reaching out to people that I knew in the industry. And I was like, "Hey, I'm on the market. Let me know if you hear of anything. Here's the types of positions I'm looking for: recruiter, business development, management. I'm also open to leaving recruiting and going into more of a sales focused job." And in the second 2 weeks, so it took me about a month to find a new position, but in those second 2 weeks, I had a much greater ability to find opportunities. And by the end of my search, I had 4 offers on the table, and I had to choose between those 4 offers, but they were all people who had introduced me to somebody or who didn't know I was on the market. And they're like, we would love to have you. We've loved working with you in the past. We've seen your network. We see the value of what you're bringing to the table. We'd love to hire you. And so that's where I think recruiters can kind of bridge that gap. If you're looking for the right recruiter and you're finding somebody in your own niche and you're building that relationship with them and you're reaching out to the right people, they've got the network. So that's a huge networking opportunity for you. Even if they don't have something for you at that time, maybe they know somebody who might know somebody. And so it's so important to build those relationships. But I think with networking as well, like you can't, even if you're gainfully employed and you're super happy where you're working, you can't let that slip. You always have to be out there having conversations with people and keeping up that communication. But I also have a strong belief as a recruiter, it's my job to give back. So even if it's somebody that I don't think I'll ever place, I always try to at least give them advice on what to do with their job search, or I'll take a quick review of their resume and say, hey, here's a couple things you could improve with your resume, or spend those few minutes just to try and help them. Because you never know when that person is going to come back to you and say, hey, you really helped me on this. I've got a referral for you, or I've got a job you can work on, or I mean, honestly, just tell you thank you. And that's really what we're in it for, right? Is to help people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, looking like a few years out now, what do you think will shape future recruitment in this space?
Yeah. So, I mean, for my space, I think we've got a lot of technologies that are coming out right now that are super interesting. So, that's going to be a big change. But really, the recruitment industry, I would say, has been fairly stagnant. Every recruiter out there has learned the same tactics, the same experiences. It's get a job, fill the job, and fill that job by thinking outside of the box. Whether it is, using LinkedIn, Indeed, any of the other job boards out there to try and find people, networking, going to conferences, any of that stuff. But I think the biggest area for improvement that I can see within our space is really the customer service aspect. There's too many candidates that tell us that I was working with this other recruiter and they put me forward for a couple of positions and then I never heard back from them. Or too many clients who are like, we hired this recruiter, we paid them an upfront fee, and they sent us a couple of candidates and then they just disappeared on us. We as recruiters have to be accountable for that and do better. We have to communicate better, and we really have to be more focused on the service of what we're doing. Being on both sides of the job search recently, and I am actually thankful that I went on a job search myself and decided to make a move because now I understand it more from the candidate perspective. I worked with a recruitment agency very early on as well in my search that I reached out to, and they sent me a couple positions to look at. I'm like, okay, these are the ones I'm interested in. And I never heard back from that recruiter. Like to this day, I've still never heard back from that recruiter. And that is super frustrating. As a recruiter, like being in a position to be like, all you have to do is say, hey, they're not interested. It's not going to offend me. It's not going to hurt my feelings. It's just going to give me that closure. So I think that's the biggest thing that we need to see change in the recruiting industry. I think in terms of technology, we're going to see a lot more AI usage, but I think there's going to be companies that'll go overboard on it for sure, because I've already started seeing a ton of companies that are sending out just really obvious AI driven content, really obvious driven AI messaging, sequencing, all of that kind of stuff, which I think doesn't bode well for them because eventually people are just going to be like, well, you don't really actually know what we do. You don't know what my experience looks like from both sides. And it just doesn't look great. So I think there's going to be a drive into AI, but I think it has to be done really, really carefully and really, really respectful of the people that you're reaching out to, because time is important for everyone. And if you're going too far into the AI side without being careful, you're going to alienate a lot of your audience and just not be successful.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a fascinating situation with AI and recruitment. I think it's going to be interesting how it kind of pans out over the next couple of years for sure. And yeah, what's next for Lee Group Search? Is there any kind of exciting plans in the pipeline? Any new markets you're looking to expand into?
So I don't think we're looking to expand into any like massive new markets. Like we'll look at probably a lot more in the hydrogen space. We have been working in that so far, and we've got a little bit of traction and growth there. And then likely some more work with like data centers, because there's a lot of push between data centers and renewable energy to tie themselves together. I mean, it's a massive energy source. And so it makes a lot of sense, I think, for us to be able to jump into it and really work with the data centers on like what are the companies that we should be working with in terms of developing these energy products or projects, I should say. Who are the owner operators? Who are the asset managers? How do we really drive this to be efficient, to be a growth industry, but also to do right by the planet? I mean, the younger generations are not the same as, let's say, the boomer generations, where, there was a little bit less concern for that and a lot more concern for capitalism and growth and really just focusing on those core beliefs and principles will draw a lot more of the younger individuals into our industry, which is what we want. We want people who are concerned with the environment, concerned with the growth of renewable energy and really the growth of the grid. I mean, that's the I think the biggest issue that we're going to see is what's going to happen with our grids. How are we going to get enough energy to sustain these data centers? How are we going to get enough energy to also sustain our populations, to bring down the cost of electricity for some markets, to prevent things like Texas having freezes and their grid absolutely collapsing. We have to focus on that kind of stuff. And so I think for us, that's really where our biggest focus is. Um, Aside from that, we've got our own podcast that we're growing, and that's been pretty successful. But the biggest thing that we're focused on right now is our WhatsApp networking series. So we're working on putting together networking series across North America, most of them sponsored by our clients. And it's really just an opportunity for people to come together in a like-minded environment and talk about the industry, talk about opportunities, talk about challenges. And it comes from a lot of different perspectives. So not just the renewable energy, but also the workforce development. How do we ensure an equitable workforce? How do we make sure that everybody's being advocated for in the most relevant and the strongest way possible to ensure that we're moving closer to our targets? But then the other side of it is like bringing students in who have the opportunity to talk to CEOs and to talk to hiring managers and to get their start in the industry. And then the other aspect of it is like really advocating for our industry. There's a lot of us against them when it comes to like oil and gas, and we really need to reframe that. Energy is energy, and we need to all be on the same page about it, and we need to be able to say, well, yeah, this is a great area to do a natural gas development, but have you considered also adding in solar, battery, wind to offset some of that carbon, or to offset some of the energy needs even just for that facility? And as an Albertan, I have to find the balance between oil and gas and renewable energy. And we need to have all of our leadership doing that as well. And it goes on both sides of the border. Texas does a really great job of advocating for both sides. And so we want to bring people together to have these types of conversations in a more casual environment. So that's really the goal for our networking series, and we're really excited about it. We're launching our first one here in Calgary for Stampede, which is the greatest outdoor show on earth, if you haven't heard of it. I advocate for everybody to try it out at least one time in their lifetime because it's a ton of fun. But yeah, that's I think what we're really, really excited for.
Brilliant. Great stuff, Victoria. You've been a fantastic guest and I've really enjoyed this conversation. For our audience, where can they find out a bit more about Lead Group Search and also connect with yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn. Just look me up, Victoria Waye. And our website is pretty in depth, leadgroupsearch.com. And then you can follow us on LinkedIn, which is just look up Lead Group Search.
Yeah, thanks very much, Victoria. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time today, Sam. And hopefully people get something from it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Bye.